welcome, and this episode we're on day 3 of the Kerbal Countdown to see how long it takes for KSP2 to be playable. And to start off, we're going to be sending a flyby mission to the moon to collect some science so we can get proper landing gear. Here's the finished product for the spacecraft we're going to be taking to the moon. And to start off with, we have some larger boosters than our orbital mission last episode. We have some larger boosters. Then we have a larger, I'm going to call it really the main stage, the stage that's going to get us into orbit. And then this stage right here will get us into, well, it'll maneuver us into an intersection with the moon's sphere of influence, and then maneuver us back so we can get a touchdown back on Kerbin, and hopefully the Science Junior doesn't explode during this whole process. The rocket is ready to take off with Jeb inside, and as long as these boosters don't go wild, it should be fine. But they have not gone wild so far. I was kind of concerned they were all going to go flail about, but they haven't, so yeah, it looks like it's just smooth sailing from the moon from here. And one thing I did forget to mention last episode, as you can probably tell with the atmospheric, the atmosphere looking pretty different than it usually does in the base game, I do have some mods installed, and one of them is the Outer Planets mod, meaning that I have about, I believe, 4 planets and a bunch of moons that have been added to the game that are just a little further out than Joule. We have just left Kerbin's atmosphere, and I've gone ahead and initiated the orbiting burn. That should get us into a nice stable round orbit around the planet so we can do our maneuver to the moon. And yeah, Jeb doesn't look excited anymore about these things, probably because he's done this. I believe this will be his 3rd time in space now, and so far so good. It looks like I might not have enough delta V in this stage to actually get a full orbit, but that's a-okay since I should have more than enough to get to the moon and back with this. And let's see here, almost there. I was a little concerned that I was going to pass by the apoapsis, but it doesn't look like it. And yeah, we just ran out of fuel. It's good. Yep, looking good, looking good. And come on, come on. Why has it gotta go so slow? Come on, we can do it. So while we're waiting for this, while waiting for a full stable orbit around Kerbin, I will go ahead and mention the next step after this moon mission, which is that I'm going to be sending out 2 missions actually. One will be a landing, and the next one is going to be a mission where I'm going to go send a probe into solar orbit. Okay. Yeah, sorry, just trying to circularize the orbit a bit since it looks like I might be dipping into the atmosphere right down there. But yeah, I'm going to be sending out a probe into solar orbit just so I can go collect a bunch of science from that. I've gone ahead and initiated the maneuver burn in order to get us to the moon. I have not upgraded the, I believe it's the planning place. I don't know what it's called, but I've not upgraded it yet, so I don't get to see any actual useful information, including on if I've intersected the moon, so I'm just kind of guessing at this point, which is probably what I'm going to save right now. And yeah, it'll take a minute for it to get fully out there, so I'll go ahead and skip until we're actually on our intersect with the moon. We have a very high intersection with the moon, but we do have one, which means that we can go and collect a butt ton of science from it, if I could see anything. Fun little Kerbin clips there. See? Gotta get this stuff from the Science Junior. Jeb looks excited, yeah. First time Kerbin's ever been outside of Kerbin's sphere of influence. And yeah, see temperature. Yeah, it's probably gonna be the same as around the atmosphere of Kerbin. And yeah, who would have thought there'd be no air in space? And yeah, that's pretty much all we were going to do at the moon. And let me just go ahead and time warp until we're out of here. I can't. There you are. I couldn't find it. Okay, so it looks like we're back in Kerbin orbit. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and skip until we're at the apoapsis. And I'm just going to go initiate a de-orbiting burn right here in order to get it so that we just touch Kerbin's atmosphere. Well, actually, I'd say more than likely hit Kerbin's surface, and so we can get all our science whenever we land. We're pretty close to hitting Kerbin's atmosphere. I went ahead and actually altered our orbit a little bit, mostly because I ran it as it is, and Jeb just kind of exploded in the upper atmosphere because apparently the Science Junior exploded and kind of led to this whole catastrophic thing where Jeb exploded with it. So yeah, anyway, what's going to happen now is we're just going to kind of like skim the upper atmosphere, slow us down, and the upper atmosphere will continually get slowed down by the upper bit of the atmosphere until eventually we land on the planet. And it looks like we're about to hit, and the moment of truth is now, really. Yep, there it is. 68. I was going down to 56, and yeah, you can see it dropping. Okay, and what does it look like? It looks good, yeah. So what's going to happen is we're just going to keep doing that probably about 3 or 4 times, and we'll eventually slow it down enough to hit the surface of Kerbin safely without burning up. But we are in our final, looks like, descent, sort of like atmospheric slowdown here, and yeah. At this point, we're going to be we're kind of like almost like in an orbit in the upper atmosphere in a way, but we slowed down enough that I'm pretty sure at this point that we're going to end up hitting the surface before we leave the atmosphere this time around. And yeah, oh yeah, that's definitely happened. That's a major slowdown right there. Ooh. Are doing good? Yeah. Okay, yeah, that's good. Looks like that. I was a little concerned that Science Junior was going to blow up again, but it hasn't, so yeah. That's definitely good, and I'll go ahead and skip to when we're back at the Space Center. Back at the Space Center, it looks like we got a ton of science, so let's see here. I'm just going to go and research the paths required to get us a proper moon landing here. Let's see here, visualization. I just need whichever one can get me landing gear, to be honest. Oh, there it is, but yeah. I'll go ahead and fast forward to whenever the rocket's ready for liftoff. I've decided to actually change my plans a little bit. I didn't have enough science to go fully, go through the moon mission the way I wanted to do it, so instead I'm sending out a solar probe, which would get us the necessary science needed. This pretty much is just working as one giant dart. I'm not even going to attempt to orbit. I'm just going to throw this thing into space until I eventually get into solar orbit with it. It's time to go ahead and launch the solar probe, and it's just gonna, we're not gonna even attempt to do an orbital burn of any sort. It's just gonna go straight up into the sky, and it should get us into solar orbit. And so just as we reach solar orbit, right as it happens, I'm gonna record data with these 3 instruments and transmit it back to Kerbin, and at that point the probe will probably end up being inoperable. But that's pretty much just the plan for this thing, is to get us the necessary science needed for the parts I want for the MUN mission. Okay, so we've just pretty much reached the border of space right here with our probe. Pretty much pitch black out mostly because we're getting eclipsed by the Earth right now. That's fine, however. I didn't really expect to have an issue with the probe just kind of randomly floating a bit in terms of slowly drifting in one direction or not. Okay, sorry. But yeah, it keeps drifting just kind of randomly. I think it's probably because this thing is not SAS capable, meaning it has no way to actually control it. See, I'm just trying to look for that 3rd antenna there, but basically this thing is just going to go straight up as it is right now and just kind of shoot up into solar orbit and transmit all the junk back. And there it is. The sunrise of Kerbin, well, I guess more like we're rising at this point, but yeah. A sunrise in space. Just thought this was cool. That's Minmus right there in the distance. We actually almost had an intercept with it. Unfortunately, we are going to barely miss it, but that'll probably be the target of possibly episode 3 or 4 right there. I don't know, just thought it was cool. I kind of coincidentally got super close to Minmus with this exit out of Kerbin's sphere of influence here. So actually, I did a little bit of playing with the probe, and we're going to get super close to Minmus. I'm not going to take the data from it, mostly because I don't need it. Well, also because I'm going to go send a mission here that'll be more comprehensive. So what's going to happen now is we're just going to get super close. Just kind of figured it'd be a nice little thing to show in the video. Kind of an accidental Minmus flyby here. Yeah. there it is, the minty dot in space. And I will have to do some more like playing with the maneuver once I get out of it, but we should still definitely have enough fuel to just leave Kerbin's Sphere of Influence at the end of this. Let's see there, loaded, and all I've got to do now is kind of just wait for the thing to roll around until we're on prograde, and we should get out of the Sphere of Influence of Kerbin once again. We just left Kerbin's Sphere of Influence, so all we need to do at this point is use what is a ton of battery left, actually. And we're just going to go ahead and transmit the data back to Kerbin. And it should net us a decent amount of signs from just the space right next to Kerbin. Well, actually, right next to Kerbin's Sphere of Influence anyway. But yeah, that should be enough signs anyway for us to build the lunar rocket for next episode.